But now I've completely switched to Reaper. Everything I can do in Pro Tools, I can do in Reaper and more. I will be talking a little bit in the beginning of the video just to give you some context, but if you want to get right into it, jump to this timestamp. I've been using Pro Tools for 7 years now. I even have a certification from Avid. I use it every single day in the studio at my job, and I'm starting to grow sick of it. Yes, back in the day, Pro Tools was the superior DAW, and to their credit, till this day, the audio editing workflow, I'm not talking about mixing, the actual selecting audio and cutting clips, that is superior. It's very efficient, it's very intuitive, but that's it. That was the only thing keeping me from switching to another DAW, because mixing in pretty much every program, it's the same more or less, but the way you select things, the way you select clips or tracks or cut audio or fade or do these little things, I think Pro Tools wins at that. About a year ago, I started dabbling into Reaper, and I was just learning how to use it in order to make a live stream mix for my church, and that was fine. I learned it pretty quickly because, again, mixing is pretty much the same in every program. But that entire time until now, I wasn't really able to switch to Reaper because of the editing workflow. It was just too slow for me. And in my type of work, I'll give you an example of what I do in the studio. We record 30-minute episodes, 4 of them every day. I record and edit and mix and export and send them out. So I'm pretty much editing in real time. We would finish recording and then I would hit play and start cutting the audio as it's going. Sometimes I can't catch it if there's a lot of things I need to cut, but most of the time I'm editing in real time. And if every time I need to select something, I would need to hit another button and then turn that off and turn it on, that's a lot of time wasted. So I'm thinking to myself, Reaper is great. You can do a lot of things. You can customize pretty much everything in Reaper, but just that editing workflow, I can't do that. Until I discovered Reaper scripting, and I went down the rabbit hole. I learned an entire new language. It's called Lua. Basically allows you to program features that don't exist. What exists in Pro Tools here doesn't exist in Reaper. Well, you can just do it if you know how to. First, I was just customizing the user interface, changing the look of the buttons and the colors and stuff. And then I started to learn how to program. Now, I will say this, I do have a programming background. I did 2 years of computer science in university. So even though it was an entirely new language of programming, I'm not entirely new to programming. I used a lot of ChatGPT to help. But ChatGPT isn't like magic. You need to know what to ask it and only ask it small things. So I took every single feature from Pro Tools that I used every day, all the time, and I programmed it into Reaper. It was very challenging. Some of the actions already existed under a different name, so that was just a matter of changing the shortcut. But I wrote over 40 scripts from scratch. And if you're seeing this video, it means I'm finally done. There's no more features that I wish existed in Reaper that exist in Pro Tools. I made them all. And I was really just doing this for myself to be able to use Reaper, because if you didn't know, Reaper is not free, but you can use it for free for as long as you want without any limitations. They just tell you when you open it, hey, it's not free, you can buy it if you want. It's very lightweight, very reliable, works on pretty much any machine, doesn't require high specs. So I thought, what if there are other people like me who want to move away from Pro Tools and think Reaper is great, but just can't do it yet because there's no equal alternative to it. Learning an entirely new program can be very time consuming, and maybe you really don't have the time to do this. Seriously, think about it. What if you could right now instantly move to Reaper from Pro Tools without learning anything new? All the keyboard shortcuts, everything you do with your mouse, all the editing workflow, everything is the same. I made them all. I have made a very small configuration file. It's only 5 megabytes that you can import into your Reaper installation, and you will have everything I have exactly the same. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to download and install Reaper and get my settings. And I'll give you a quick run through of all the features that I programmed. I will not go into details because that would be too long. But if you saw something that you want me to go deeper into, let me know in the comments and I'll make a video about it. Let's download Reaper. Download, find your operating system. Let's also go ahead and download the SWS extensions for Reaper. So I'm going to click here and also find your operating system. Third thing we need is repack. Click here and find your operating system and download it. You can donate if you want or just download. And finally, you're gonna use the link in the description or in the pinned comment to go to my Google Drive and download my configuration file. It's called Daniel Reaper Pro Tools. This one, just hit on the 3 dots, download. Gonna double click on the installer, agree. Now you can either do a normal installation, or if you already have a working version of Reaper and you're not sure if you want to change it or not, you can do a portable install. So right here, I will check portable and I will choose a folder. Let's make a folder on the desktop, new folder, call it Reaper Pro. So I'll hit browse and find my folder. I called it Reaper Pro. That's it. Just click on it, hit OK. And this is where it will be installed. Next, install. Do I want to run Reaper now? No, because I want to install the extensions. So let me double click on the installer for the SWS extensions. Agree. Now I also have to choose the path. Because I did a portable install, I will browse and find my Reaper Pro. Just click on the folder and hit OK, and then next, install. Okay, it's completed. I'll open that folder where I installed it, and you can see here there's Reaper. Double click. It's scanning for all the plugins. Just the very first time you install it, you're gonna have to wait a little bit if you have a lot of plugins to scan through all of them. But after this is done, it opens very quickly. It prompts you to select an audio device, so let's do that. This is how Reaper looks by default. It's really ugly, but it doesn't matter because you're changing it anyway. If you installed Reaper normally, you're gonna go to options and show Reaper resource path in Explorer Finder, and this is all of the data that concerns Reaper. But if you do the portable install and you know where it is, you can just open that folder. It's the same folder, and I'll go to user plugins and I will drag the repack.dll into here. Now I'll close Reaper and I'll open it again, and since we installed the package manager, it will tell you, hey, do you want to install these packages? But you don't need them for now, so just cancel. And now let's import my configuration file. Hit Control P, or you can go to preferences by clicking on options and preferences, and I will scroll all the way up to general and import configuration. Now it's just a matter of finding the file that you downloaded from me and double clicking on it. This will restart Reaper, okay, and it's scanning through all these files. When it's finished scanning, you can hit import. Now it's going slightly slower because I'm screen recording also at the same time. Boom, very nice looking Reaper. We're not done yet. There's one more step, and it's to synchronize the packages. So I click on extensions, repack, synchronize packages, and this is just downloading some of the functions that I am using in my own scripts, and I'm just doing that to make my configuration file very small, because if I include all these things in my file, it will be slightly too big. Let's close Reaper, open it again, double click, create new tracks. If you want to create multiple, Control Shift N and type in the number of tracks you want to create. I took the fader cap from ProTools. I redesigned it from the ground up. Also the record button and the solo and mute. And I even made these tally lights that tell you if something is muted or soloed or on record. And if you click them, it will clear that bunch of muted tracks, and click that, it unmutes all of them. If you notice, they are blue. By default, they are gray in Reaper. And the reason they are blue is because I decided that will happen. If you go to the extensions right here, SWS, there's an auto color. This decides what colors are the tracks and the size of them. So I decided if a track has an audio input, it will be blue. You can see right here. If it has a MIDI input, let's go here and select MIDI. It will become like an instrument track in Pro Tools. If it's receiving audio from another track, it will become green, because that's the color of an aux track in Pro Tools. And if it's record armed, it will become red. When this is a folder, the fader becomes blue. And you can turn this off altogether. So if I hit extensions, SWS, turn off enable auto track coloring. So now if I create tracks, they are all gray. And if you explicitly change the color of a track, it will stay that color. Here in the studio, I have a 4K screen. That's the resolution. So if I keep my layouts the same and hit record here, it will become very small. So here's where you have to fix a little bit if you have a bigger screen. SWS, auto color, and I will change these to the same colors, but 200%. So this is red fader. Let's do 200%. Here you go. It's fixed and everything is scaling correctly. If I send one track to another, this becomes green because it's receiving. So we're gonna do all of them to 100%. This is blue fader, 200%, green fader, 200%, orange fader, 200%. Now, no matter what you do, they will stay the same size. These are the colors that I chose. You can change them in here. If you're using a normal HD screen, no problem. If you're using 2K or 4K screen, you might have to change the scaling accordingly. If you have a bunch of markers that you want to move to Reaper, you can create a MIDI track and then go to File and Export MIDI and name the file, put it somewhere. And then in Reaper, you're gonna create a new track and go to Insert Media File, or you can hit Control Shift I, just like Pro Tools, same thing. Find your MIDI file and hit OK. And here you go. You have all your markers in that session. Now you can delete that track, you don't really need it. And you can see all the markers are exactly where they should be with their names. Making a marker is with the numeric keypad enter key. Same thing as Pro Tools, you can call it something and hit the enter key. Okay, we have some audio going on. Control equals to remove the mixer. This is how you do it in Pro Tools. Same thing, everything. R to zoom out, T to zoom in horizontally. If you select, this is your normal edit selection. You can hit X to delete. You can select and hit F to fade. You can cut with B, and if you want to heal the cut, you can select and hit H. You can select clips and then Alt-Shift-3 and it will consolidate. In Reaper, it's called glue. The way I'm getting to the actions list is with Shift and question mark. Or you can click on actions right here and show action list. Instead of searching, I will hit find action and do Shift-Alt-3. This works on any computer, okay? If you're using Mac, it's Shift-Alt Num3. On Windows, when you hit Shift, it becomes the page down button. So regardless if the numlock is on or off or Windows or Mac, this will work. In Pro Tools, you can just do a selection and do Alt-Shift-3 and it will create an empty clip. In Reaper, it doesn't do that. You have to hold Control and drag. That's how you create a clip. Or something really cool, if you have a clip selected and you do that on another track or somewhere else, you are basically copying portions of that clip. Horizontal scroll, Shift and scroll wheel, tab to transient, it will jump to transients. If you hold Shift, it will select. Shift L to select backwards to the transients. You can go with P and semicolon to select up and down. If you're playing, you can hit the up and down arrow keys to follow the cursor with the playhead. If you do that while hitting Shift, you can select. I use that a lot when I'm editing. If you hit the 1 key, it will go backwards. If you hit the 2 key, it will fast forward. And while this is happening, you can hit 0 to stop or 0 to play. Same thing with space. Or you can hit Shift and the less than sign to rewind, or the greater than sign to go forward. And you can hit Shift space to play half speed. Even if the playback is going on, you can still hit Shift space to play back speed and it will continue from where it is. It will not stop and restart from the cursor position. Also, I did the insertion follows playback. I made it into a button here. You can either click it or you can hit the N key to turn it on and off. So if it's on, the cursor will stop where the playback is stopped. If it's off, the playback will go back to the cursor. Here you have your grid. You can click here and you can choose from quarter note, 8th note, 16th, and you can combine it with the triplets or the dotted. You have waveform zoom. You can hold Alt Shift and brackets to make it bigger or smaller. This is not gain, this is just zoom in on the waveform. Or you can click here and do it like this from the slider. Here is your snapping. If you have an edit selection like this in Reaper, it's called a razor edit area. That's the same thing as an edit selection in Pro Tools. If you have a selection and you hold Shift and then click on any other track, it extends that selection and selects the other tracks. Now in Pro Tools, it doesn't work like that. In Pro Tools, it only selects the other track, but I prefer it this way. Look, I'll show you. I made another script exactly like Pro Tools, just in case you prefer that. I'm going to the preferences by hitting Control P and mouse modifiers. And then in here, I'll choose media item, left click, and I'll double click on this Shift action list. And I'll choose the one that is called extend razor edit area to mouse cursor without selecting tracks in between. So let me choose this and apply. So now if I do this, it's only selecting the track that I'm clicking on, not everything in between. However, if these tracks are selected and you click, it will include them in this selection. Click on a media item from the bottom half, create its time selection and then edit selection. And then I hold Shift and click here. It also creates that and selects everything in between. You can go here to media item bottom half and left click. Here under Shift, you can change it to add items to selection and extend time selection and razor edit area without the selection of tracks in between. I made these variations just in case you prefer it that way. I'm just showing you the things I did, but if you don't care about all of this, just use it the same way you use Pro Tools and I promise you it will feel the same. All the shortcuts will do the same thing you expect them to do. There's not enough time in this video anyway to show you everything I did. It took 4 months. Another thing that is really cool is the screen sets. So I'll hit Control E. If I hit Alt 1, default look. If I hit Alt 2, that's the floating fader. I use that a lot if I'm recording voiceover. Now you can't open multiple of these like Pro Tools because this is the actual mixer window. However, I did kind of a workaround for that because usually the reason I open a floating window in Pro Tools is just to watch the meters while I'm recording to make sure I'm not too low and not clipping. So I created a meter that you can open multiple instances of by holding Control Alt and double clicking on this track control panel. You have a meter right here. You can move it around, put it wherever you want. And this will display the input level. Even if I have plugins on the track, if I hold Control Alt and double click, it will put the meter at the beginning. So I'm always seeing the input level. And with this, I also did two variations. This allows you to see the input levels if you have audio on the track or if you have it record enabled. The other variation I have is this one, floating input meter, and it will put this meter on the input effects right here. This doesn't exist in Pro Tools, but whatever you put on the input effects gets actually baked into the recording. But this effect is not doing anything to the audio at all. It's just a meter. So if you use that instead, you'll see the input levels regardless of if you have the track armed or not. You'll always see the actual hardware input signal. And to change that, you can go to the mouse modifiers again and choose here track control panel. I assigned it to Control Alt and double click, and this is it. You can double click on it and choose floating input meter. Sample goes in, sample goes out. There's nothing happening. I'm just using it as a meter. Now, of course, if you also double click on a track, you will get this color swatch. This is exactly like Pro Tools. The exact same colors that you find in Pro Tools and the same arrangement, and you can also scale it. The scaling took me a while to figure out how to properly scale it because it was very wonky. You can double click again or you can just close it from here. This is the universe view on the top. In Reaper, it's called the navigator, Alt 3. This is your normal Pro Tools like windows. So you have your arrange view right here and then hit Control equals. You have your mixer view. Let's do Alt 4. This is the tracks list. Just like Pro Tools, if you click here, you can hide certain tracks. They still exist. They just are not visible in here. You can also hide them from the mixer view. Let's go to Alt 6. This is the clips list that you would have on the right side of the screen of Pro Tools. And Alt 5 will give me both the tracks list and the clips list. And I assigned to Alt 9 video screen set. So if I have a video, it will appear here. I found this to be more neat than just opening a floating video window like this. So it's the same shortcuts anywhere. Control 9, it opens the video. Control 3, it opens the big clock. Control 2, project settings. Control 5, this is the marker manager. The plus button opens monitoring effects. Now pay close attention. Pro Tools doesn't have that. This is something really cool in Reaper. You can EQ your speakers or headphones or whatever you're monitoring on without worrying about having to turn it off before you export. Whatever effects you put on here are strictly for the monitoring. I'm using these headphones, Audio-Technica M40X, and they are not exactly flat. So I have made a preset for them, and this is the EQ for my headphones. Corrects what I'm hearing, but it doesn't affect anything I'm exporting. Recording is Control Space or the 3 button, and it's a punch in, punch out. The really cool thing about Reaper is it's not like Pro Tools, where if you don't have armed track, you can't record. No, in Reaper you can. I can just hit record and it starts recording while it's going. I can remove a track from recording just like that. I can create a whole new track and record it and it will start recording. So that's really cool. Now on Mac, by default, the command space is a system shortcut that opens Spotlight Search, but we are using that to record. So let's change it. You're gonna go to the Apple logo on top and then system settings. And after that, you're gonna scroll down to keyboard and go to keyboard shortcuts. Right here, you have something called Spotlight. You want to change these. By default, it is command space and alt space for these, but I'm using command space to record in Reaper. So I'm going to double click on this and I'll press alt space. And now it's that shortcut. And I'm going to double click on this and set it to alt command space. Okay, done. Now the Spotlight Search works with alt space. And I have assigned the regular numbers 1 and 2 for window scrolling. So right now it's scrolling. I can hit 1, it will stop scrolling. Hit 1 again, it will continue scrolling. If I hit 2, it goes to the end of the page, it jumps to the next. And in the menus, they are in the options right here, automatically scroll view during playback or continuous scrolling. So when I'm editing, I don't want any scrolling, so I'll turn these off. And by the way, if you click anywhere, it will stop. It's not fixed like Pro Tools. If you click on the script and edit action, you can see right here, I have a global script that starts with Reaper that will call these scripts to check if there are any armed tracks. So this will light on to check if there are any solo tracks or any muted tracks. And then I have the clear mute, clear record, clear solo. So when you click these, if I have all of these muted, I'll click this, it will clear the mute. We talked about the razor edit. I also have it assigned to a shortcut. So if I hit Shift X, it will select to whatever the mouse cursor is without actually clicking. This works even if you don't have a selection going on. With clicking, you need to have a selection going on first, because the way Reaper works during playback, if I hold shift and hit any of the arrow keys, it will extend the selection to that. And also, by the way, if I'm rewinding with one, I can hold shift and the arrow keys and it will extend the selection. Same thing if I'm fast forwarding past that, hold shift and the arrow, it will extend. And let's say that window scrolling off, I can move by hitting the down arrow or the up arrow and then the side arrows. It will make the cursor jump to the playhead, and then the side arrows will move the view. Just like Pro Tools, same thing, everything. I'm just explaining these things that are very trivial in Pro Tools. You don't really think about them, but they are not that trivial. Like seriously, just to make a selection, click here and then click on another track and select everything in between. It took all this. Like, come on, that is not obvious. There's playback going on. The enter key goes to the beginning of the project and stops the playback. You have time selection. The arrow keys go to the beginning and end of the time selection, just like Pro Tools. The Y key, I even did that, although I really hated in Pro Tools. If you have a clip selected, when you hit the Y key, it will take it and snap it to the beginning of the project. That's Pro Tools kind of thing. I don't like it. I just made it anyway because I'm making every features I can. By the way, an item is a clip. In Reaper, it's called an item, a media item. If I double click it, it will create a selection on the entire item. Or if I double click between items in an empty space, it will also create a selection. And I can go up and down with the selection with the P and semicolon keys. And same thing, if I have empty space in the beginning of the project and there's an item here, I can double click in the empty space and create a selection. These scripts are being used by other scripts. Shift and semicolon, it will extend the selection down. Shift and P, it will extend the selection up. Alt enter goes to the end of the project. Shift enter, that creates a selection from the cursor to the beginning of the project. However, the really useful thing that I always need if I'm editing audiobooks is Alt Shift Enter. I have this selection right here. Let's say I have a bunch of edits and I need to move a lot of audio, like hours of audio. I'll put my cursor, hit Alt Shift Enter, and it will select everything after the cursor until the end of the project. That's very useful. I also assigned it to the shortcut A because I use that in video editing and it's less keys than Alt Shift Enter. And same thing, Shift A to select everything before. And everything on the track works normally, like Shift R to record, Shift I to turn off input monitoring, Shift M to mute, Shift S to solo, Alt A to zoom out to the entire project. Now in Reaper, you don't have track types like in Pro Tools. Any track can be anything. So you can have mono audio or stereo audio or surround or video or a picture or notes. Anything can be on the track. In fact, if you go to the route button right here, each track can be from 2 up to 128 channels. That's crazy. And then you can hold and drag the route button to another track to send it to it. Unlike Pro Tools, you don't have preset buses that you send to an aux track and whatever. You can just send from a track to another track directly by dragging the route button to the other track. But I want to record the output of that track or multiple tracks onto this. So I can just go here. Instead of saying in, I want to record the output stereo. So let me set the input to none and let's record pre-fader post effects. Okay, so even if I have this fader down, let's arm the track and hit record. And now whatever is going from here is getting recorded into this track. You can see. So that's the equivalent of sending a bunch of tracks to a bus and then setting the input of another track to that bus and then recording it. In Reaper, you can just send the tracks to that track and record the output of it. With the question mark, you can jump forward an entire measure. With the M key, you can jump backwards an entire measure. Less than and greater than signs, you can jump quarter of a measure. Even the E key will extend the track to maximum height. So if I don't have this mixer, you can see. Now, if you create an empty clip and double click on it, it will open the MIDI editor. To open and close the MIDI editor, it's Control and the minus. So Control plus is the mixer, Control minus, it's the MIDI editor. Usually on Windows, it's the Windows key and the equals sign, but I wasn't able to assign it to the Windows key because it's a system shortcut. And on Mac, it's Control and equals, but I haven't tried it on Mac. I'm mainly using it on Windows. So you can try that if you want. If you're using Mac, you can hit Shift question mark and go to that shortcut that is show MIDI editor window, and you can add right here and hit Control and equals and see what happens. I'm trying my best to just run you quickly through things I did. There's a lot more that I did. I can't show everything in one video. It's too much. And I showed this to some of my friends and I told them that I'm gonna just give it away. And they were like, no, sell it. This is a lot of work. But I'm not gonna do that. So Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. try your new Pro Tools Reaper and watch the video on the screen right now, and I'll see you there.